Old School RuneScape is about to attempt one of the hardest moves in software, rewriting part of their entire game engine for a single update. Because in order to make boats float, they have to rebuild how the world itself works. And that's the kind of update that can crash a company if it goes wrong. Most studios would never even risk it. If you've ever wondered how tech companies can push huge updates without breaking everything, this right here, this is the playbook. What Jagex is doing with sailing follows the same strategy that Apple and Epic and Netflix use when they modernize the software that you're relying on every day. I'm Josh. I've spent nearly 20 years designing and running software companies, and on this channel we go inside how the software industry really works. So if you want to understand what's happening under the hood of the tech that you use every day, hit subscribe, you're in the right place. Here's the wild part. A lot of this update's groundwork, it's already live. The new systems, things like water movement, the tile maps, the rendering, they've likely already been quietly rolled out in routine maintenance patches for months, if not years. Things that are running in the background to make sure that nothing breaks when launch day finally hits. And this is something called a progressive rollout, something that big companies use all the time. They ship the foundation before the feature, and they test it silently with live users before they finally flip it on when it's safe. And it's one of the most powerful and invisible strategies in software engineering. To make sailing work, Jagex couldn't just add boats, right? They had to do a lot of things first. They had to rewrite the movement logic because the old engine just assumed that you could only interact directly with land tiles. Now there's a whole nother layer, a boat, in between. They had to build a new, quote unquote physics for that new boat, things that it can rotate and make sure that the player now belongs on that boat and not directly on the tile map of the world. They had to redesign things like state handling, right? What happens if you log out mid-voyage? What happens with your crew, with your boat, the rest of the players on your boat? It's not just a single feature. It's a foundation and a foundational rebuild. And every one of those things that I mentioned, that touches other areas too, things like combat, NPCs, quests, even things like animation timing, right? So when engineers say they're doing something like a massive recode, this right here, this is what they mean. Most players won't even see any of this, and that's kind of the point, right? It isn't unique to RuneScape either. When Epic re-engineered Fortnite in between chapters, they actually ran both engines side by side for months. And they did it live with millions of players just to be sure that nothing exploded when they flipped that switch over. And this right here that we're seeing, that's the same playbook. Test the feature in the background so no one even notices that your rewrite is already happening. And that might sound kind of extreme, but it's actually the norm in modern software. Believe it or not, you're always using tomorrow's systems before anyone even tells you they're online. So when you see something like minor patch notes, there's actually a good chance there's a major overhaul hiding in plain sight. If you like knowing what's really happening behind those updates, hit the bell so you don't miss out on the next one, because this stuff is everywhere and it's not just in games. RuneScape's engine wasn't built for open oceans. It's old, it's stable, but it's very stubborn, right? Every line of code still assumes that the world is land and that you, the player character, is standing on the ground. And that's something that developers call technical debt. It's not broken code, but just decisions that no longer quite fit. It means convincing, a 20-something-year-old program to think in new ways, and to do that without collapsing everything else that's already built on top of it. You can think of RuneScape's engine kind of like the foundations of a house. Most updates build on top of it, right? New rooms, maybe new paint, maybe even a second floor, but the foundation stays the same. Now imagine realizing the foundation itself, it's not built for the floor plan that you want, right? You can't expand or do anything beyond that original floor plan. And that's exactly what sailing represents. It's not just adding a room, you're digging a whole new area to the side of the house, reinforcing your foundation and building a whole new foundation so that you can add a whole new wing. And once that foundation is expanded, Jagex can build things that weren't possible or even thought of before, right? They've got a whole new wing that they can build up on. New systems, new kinds of movement, maybe even new types of world, who knows? Because if you just keep building up without fixing and maintaining and expanding the base, eventually the whole thing is just going to collapse. And that's why foundational updates like this take so long. because they don't just make the game look bigger, they make it capable of becoming bigger. When you're running engineering teams, one of the hardest parts about updates like this one, it's not necessarily the code. It's convincing the leadership and the stakeholders not to panic because nothing visible has changed for months, right? You could spend months or years rebuilding the foundation and everyone's asking, you're like, where is everything? Why does it all look the same, right? And that's the hidden art behind the software, because doing massive work that nobody notices means you're doing it right and nothing broke. So here's how studios like Jagex would typically handle it, right? First comes the engine rewrite, and that's the first thing to ship, and it's going to be tucked into small maintenance patches over the course of months or even years to get the engine to the state they need it in. Then they need to refactor or even build all new internal tools. Those are the things that they use inside the company to create features and quest lines and even ships. And then third, they can finally start going into closed beta, start stress testing the architecture quietly before finally they get into the fourth phase, which is bringing it to the public, flipping that switch on because they know that at this point, it's already stable. So by the time the players experience a new skill, the foundation has already been in place for months. And most of the real engineering work, that's long been finished. And this isn't just about RuneScape or gaming. Banks do this with their transaction engines. Netflix does it with their recommendation engine. Even things like NASA do it with mission software, because big systems, they have to evolve layer by layer by layer, always alive while they're changing. It's the only way that modern software is able to survive and evolve without constant outages and constant downtime. So as the sailing update launches, remember, what you're seeing is just the very tip of the iceberg. The real innovation, that's already been working beneath the surface for a long time, just waiting for that switch to flip on. I'm Josh, and this is the channel where we go inside the industry to stay informed. If you want to see the story of how RuneScape actually launched my software career, check out this video. And if you like this video and you're interested in seeing more like it, follow along with the channel because there'll be more coming soon.